Salutations to the Truth Core, whoever and wherever you may be on the planet. This is John Lash, the founder of NEMATA, the Sophianic School of Arts and Sciences, and I'm here to talk to you briefly about what you are not free to do. To get that message across, I'm going to talk both about freedom and beauty. And the takeaway that I intend here is a glimpse of what happens when the greatest crime attempted against humanity, it's an attempted crime, it's not a successfully completed crime. When the greatest crime attempted against humanity fails. Now, there's a little trick in my opening line, in that phrase, what you are not free to do. Well, in fact, the basic reality is that you are free to do whatever you want to do, except to harm and deceive others. Let's say that is a basic condition of the social contract. Human beings are social animals. We create society and culture in a way that no other animal does. And one of the basic agreements that makes it possible to do this is the agreement that I make with you, for instance. Let's say that you and I agree that we will not do anything to deceive or harm others. And given that condition, we are allowed to do whatever we wish. We are free to do whatever we like. Consider that as a basic proposition of the social contract. Now, on the topic of freedom, I can make this observation. Due to the crime or attempted crime against humanity being perpetrated right now, under the pretext of a pandemic, some people are reacting, some people are objecting to the great plan, the great reset. And so you see these people in the streets, and very often you see them carrying placards or speaking, proclaiming their objections. And what are they saying? Well, they're all saying the same thing. These measures against the alleged pandemic are violating our basic human rights. We demand our rights. We demand that our rights not be violated. Well, here's something for you to chew on. You don't have any rights to be violated in the first place. I've dedicated another talk to that issue. It's called What the Globalist Masterminds Know and You Don't. So you don't have any rights. You don't have a right to breathe. You don't have a right to congregate, to marry, to have friends, to travel. You don't have a right to do any of this, and the globalist masterminds know this, and they laugh at you. They laugh at the protesters demanding their rights. Now, the good news about this statement, which otherwise might appear to be extremely negative and extremely disturbing, namely that you don't have any rights, well, the good news about that is you don't need rights. You don't need a right to be free. You are free. No one can take your freedom from you. Freedom, existentially speaking, is what you have by claiming it. No one gives you freedom. No government, no authority gives you freedom. No one can give you freedom. God does not give you freedom. As a human being, or as I prefer to say, a human animal, living on this planet, you are essentially free from the get-go. There are conditions on your freedom. There is one basic condition, and I already stated it. Go about the world and do as you like. Pursue your own intentions. As long as you do not deceive or harm others, you're free to do that according to the social contract. So you are free. And that is the only condition upon your freedom. And even that condition is not given by God or the state. That condition is a matter of agreement between those members of society who want to live together peacefully and thrive in a mutual experience of being human. You don't need a right to travel. You don't need anyone to authorize you to travel, to drive a car, as long as you do it carefully and respectfully with regard to others. If I drive my car down Route 66 in the United States, I agree with you that I will follow certain rules of the road so that I don't harm anyone or harm myself. Simple enough. No rights are required. No statements from authorities, no laws, no propositions are required. Some people would call that natural law or the law of the land, but I reject that term because it's not natural. When was the last time a tree or a cloud or a bubbling brook gave you the right to travel freely across the land? Nature does not dictate rights any more than God or the government. Rights cannot be dictated. They don't need to be. So right there, on the basis of those assertions, you can say happily that you are free. You don't need anyone's permission to live out your life. And that freedom is beautiful. Freedom is beautiful. But freedom is not free. It comes with responsibilities. So you have responsibilities as a free agent in this world. But you do not have rights. And you don't need them. Now back again to the topic of the day, the main event in the world drama, as I like to call it. The authorities, whoever they may be, are dictating to you what you can and cannot do. So if you think you have a right to walk around in the world without wearing a muzzle, they're telling you you're wrong. Only they can give you that right. Well, they are pernicious deceivers and liars. In fact, the authorities have no authority except that which you attribute to them. They have no authority to tell you that you can't gather in groups of more than 6, that you can't mingle in public except at a certain distance, that you can't conduct businesses or purchase things without wearing a muzzle. They have no right to tell you that, but they do have the power of enforcement and the finances to, let's say, render consequences upon you if you do not follow the rules they dictate from their self-assumed and self-delusional role of authorities. In an ideal world, in a sane and humane world, only the members of society are the authorities. But that proposition only works if the members of society, who are free to act as long as they do not harm or deceive others take responsibility for the society in which they operate. And that failure to do so is the basic advantage of the authorities who are perpetrating this crime, attempting this crime, which is a long way from success. The authorities running this program, all the way from the globalist masterminds of the Great Reset down the line to their pawns and minions in the street, certainly want you to believe that they cannot fail. But I'm here to tell you that they cannot succeed. They cannot not fail. So what would assure the failure of the Great Reset? Numerous factors, of course. But I submit to you that there is one supreme factor above all others, and that is observation and adherence to beauty. The beauty of freedom, the beauty of being alive, the beauty of enjoying life, the simple pleasures of life, and also the beauty of enjoying the responsibilities. To be free requires that you take responsibility for freedom, for yourself and all others who share it with you. The failure to take that responsibility, as I just said, is what has led humanity to the situation where the globalist perpetrators have the opportunity to pull off this crime. Let me take a moment to tell you something that occurred to me recently when I was in Belgium, which is a country of Europe that is suffering under the lockdown measures. It occurred to me that I was not free to make friends. Now, making friends is a great pleasure to me, and I am basically an amiable and friendly animal. As a matter of fact, I come from friendship. Friendship, Maine, to be precise. So I was sitting in a cafe up there in Belgium, and I realized that my natural inclination, which is amiable and harmless, to mingle with people and make friends, to talk to strangers, was not forbidden, not at all. I'm still free to make friends. No one can take my freedom away. It's only myself who can negate my own freedom, and that applies for you as well. Only you yourself can negate your freedom. And as I assessed the situation, I saw clearly, well, it works like this in the current drama. I can go about mingling with people without a mask, not observing social distancing, and I am still free to make friends. But there are consequences of that freedom. So I cannot act on my innate freedom without facing these consequences. In the past, that wasn't the case. Before March 2020, that wasn't the case. So now the entire world, well, it's not the entire world, by the way, but what you hear from the mainstream media is intended to convince you that it is everywhere and everyone in the entire world. Not true. But in large parts of the world, if I act on my freedom to make friends, then I risk certain consequences. That is completely perverted. That is completely sick. Why should I, acting on my natural instinct as a social animal, have to face consequences, why should I have to risk harm in making friends or traveling or doing any of the innumerable actions that are natural to me, to my species? This is an unnatural and perverse situation. Now, in bringing this talk around to the takeaway, and coming in under 30 minutes or 20 if I can do it, I'd like to propose to you a little riddle. I noticed in March of 2020 that WHO announced that quantum-19 was a global pandemic. Now look at this sentence that I just said. If you put a question mark after it, it sounds like this. Who announced that quantum-19 is a global pandemic? But if you take away the question mark, you have the answer to the exact same question. Who announced that quantum-19 is a global pandemic? This is a trick. It's a trick that works in English because the acronym for the World Health Organization is WHO. It doesn't work in Spanish, quien, or in French, qui. But it does work in English, and it's very odd to look at it. Because when you naturally ask yourself the question, who is behind all of this? Who is behind this attempted crime? There again, who is behind this attempted crime? Question mark. Well, the answer is the same as the question. So WHO does not merely stand for the World Health Organization, but it stands for the authorities. And the World Health Organization is simply one arm or instrument of the authorities who are forcing the insane and inhumane measures against the quantum-19 pandemic, which is a fraud, a provable medical fraud. So I introduce you to that little trick in English. Many times when you ask a question beginning with who, the answer is the same as the question. Now go to a second proposition, an iteration of that question, of that trick. I ask you this: who can be so evil? Who can be so evil that they would perpetrate this horrific program, which goes against human nature and everything that is good, true, and beautiful in human society? Who can be so evil that they would do that? The answer is the authorities, or to put it in the jargon of the living gnosis today, the archons. Now, the archons are not some weird entity from some other galaxy who decided to invade the Earth. I've talked endlessly about this subject in metahistory.org and currently on Nemata. No, the archons are the authorities who stand in front of you, whether they be the authorities at the top of the pyramid, some named and some unnamed, or whether they be the marshals in the street, the pawns, the minions. That's who? The authorities. Now this question, who can be so evil, is certainly a tremendous prompt for your mind. And I advise you to consider this question and to ask yourself this question continuously. But there's a saying in the practice of Gnosis today: a good question leads to an even better question. I have a better question for you. Who can be so hateful? That's really the question of the moment. Who can hate humanity so much? And who can hate the beauty and freedom of the true social order? Not the New World Order, that is their plan, but the true social order on this planet. Who can hate that so much that they would perpetrate or attempt to perpetrate this crime against humanity? As a self-declared Gnostic scholar, I've delved deeply into that question. As a matter of fact, the historical record shows that when the Gnostics, who were the teachers of the mystery schools, came forth in the 2nd century of the Christian era, when they came out of their inner circles and confronted the ideologues of Christianity, the religion on the rise at that moment, they were hated by those Christian ideologues, the patriarchs of the church. And it is true to this day that nothing is more hated on this planet by the authorities than the Gnostic message. And if you go and look at the events that happened in those early Christian centuries, when the Gnostics arrogated against the authorities, when they stood up to them and talked back to them, you find that one of the reasons why the Christians hated the Gnostics so much is because the Gnostics claimed that they knew the true origin of evil. They knew things about evil that the Christians did not know. And they confronted the Christians with what they knew. And for that, they were hated and despised and persecuted and ridiculed and massacred. And their schools were closed. And all of their countless works that they had written, almost all of them were destroyed. So Gnosis remains today the supreme heresy on this planet. And one aspect of that heresy is that the Gnostic knows the source of evil. The Gnostic knows who can hate that much. And you probably know it too. There are certainly plenty of clues pointing to the authors and perpetrators of this crime. So what do the authorities hate so much? What does who hate? It's not really a cosmic mystery, my friends. I propose to you another riddle, another question. Who are the enemies of humanity? Who are the enemies of all the human races? Well, that's not quite the right question. If you really want to go to the answer, and it's not hard to find, there's plenty of documentation and plenty of proof regarding that question. But if you really want to go to the heart of that question, just change it a little and ask this. Who are the self-declared enemies of all the human races, who set themselves apart as a super race, the Übervolk? Who are those people? And what exactly is it that they hate so much? Well, they hate many things. They hate freedom. They hate the simple pleasures of life, the simple enjoyments of being a human animal, and they now forbid those enjoyments. And they place you at risk of harm or death if you pursue those enjoyments. But above and beyond all else, I can assure you that they hate beauty. They are ugliness embodied, and they hate beauty more than anything. I'm not going to elaborate further on these propositions. I'll just take you to the takeaway. How is it possible to expose, oppose, and overcome this attempted crime against humanity? Many, many actions can be taken with that intention. And in fact, many actions are being taken right now. And the opposition to this great crime is escalating exponentially day by day. Of course, the mainstream media, controlled by who, doesn't want anyone to know that, so they only report on their victory. They don't report on what's taking them down. That's changing too, by the way. Oh, yes, it is. It's come to the point where it is impossible for them not to report in some way or another upon what's taking them down, upon what is opposing the Great Reset, and eventually can overthrow it. But above and beyond all else, and behind all the efforts to do so, there is beauty. The beauty of being alive, the beauty of your life, the beauty of the gift of life. Who gave you the gift of life? It wasn't WHO. It was your divine mother, the planet Earth. She gave you the gift of life, and she sustains your life with every breath. And were she to, for one instant, not do so, you would die. So it's all about beauty. Your sense of beauty is a moral force that is deathless and undefeatable. And you rely on that force in this battle. So I can say that in the outcome of this battle, as the Great Reset is defeated, beauty comes back to life again. Beauty is revived, and beauty has its revenge. So I leave you with another acronym, another 3-letter clue. PCR. What does PCR stand for? Well, in my world, it stands for post-COVID revenge. Enough said. And I'll be seeing you in the beauty to come.